Hi, welcome to Build Your Thing. Thanks for being here. I'm your host, Mick Spencer, and in this show, we dive in to how local and global experts have gone on their journey of building their thing. And that comes through to everything in small business, which we can hopefully pass on to you, the listener, and the small business builder. We're so excited. We hope you love this show and continue to enjoy it. We really encourage you to subscribe, share it with your friends and family. We want to push this message all over the world to be helping more freedom and help more people build their thing. Let's dive right in. Greg Spencer, father, builder, successful man. Thank you for being here on Build Your Thing.
No problems, Mick. Son, entrepreneur, successful man.
Ha ha ha. How good is it, hey?
That's good, mate.
I was thinking about what our listeners would love to hear from Greg Spencer, who came from such humble beginnings to such an incredible man, a mentor to many, a great father, an incredible businessman, and a very journeyed individual. You know, you've never, ever lost your sense of adventure in your life, which is what I've loved, especially as you built your business. What I really want to start, though, is take me back before carpentry, before becoming a builder and a businessman. I want to hear about your journey as a teenager into carpentry and why.
Well, Mick, thanks for the lovely intro. That was really nice. It's nice when one of your children can introduce you like that. Well, I'll go right back. I was born in Mount Gravatt in Brisbane in the late 50s. My father, your grandfather, was a public servant, so we got moved to Canberra in 1966 with the influx of public servants, and we lived there in a couple of places, and I did my schooling there, most of my schooling there. I wasn't a very good student. My head wasn't in it. I didn't know how to do the 3 R's. I was more interested in a lot of other things. So to help me along the way, I guess I could look at it like that. The headmaster of the school I was in at the time adjusted my marks to allow me to leave in fourth form, which is what you call year 10.
So it was a customised plan to.
It was a customised plan to drop kick me out of the school. You know, I sort of wanted to. First off, I wanted to be a bricklayer. I just had a thing for the building trades. I don't know why. We've got some builders in the family, but I don't know why. And anyway, I had a bit of an argument with my dad, who sort of didn't want me to move in that direction, and ended up out and about looking after myself. That was a bit rough for a few years, but I ended up with a carpentry apprenticeship, which I did in Canberra, working with a lovely fella who unfortunately just passed away last year.
Rest in peace, John.
Johnny Bradley, Henry. And it's really funny, you know, I'd go to these Master Builders Awards as a 65, 68-year-old, and little old Johnny would come up and pat me on the shoulder and he'd say, "You've done all right, boy." He used to call me boy.
He was a mentor to you?
He was a bit of a mentor to me, yeah, you know, and I think that's what you've got to look for, is mentors. And then, you know, I was only very young. I was 15 and 6 months, I think, when I started my apprenticeship, so I was 19 when I finished it. So that wasn't an unusual thing in those days, you know, probably a bit older than that, but not much older.
Was there support for businesses who'd go out on a limb to take on someone like you?
Yeah, always. And I think there still is. I mean, you know.
Yeah, school-based apprenticeships.
Yeah, and there's a bit of financial support. You know, I went through my whole career employing apprentices, and there was always support for it, you know, but they get paid. Apprentices get paid. It's not much, but it's enough to survive on.
Yep.
Yeah. So I went off and did my carpentry apprenticeship and finished that.
So you did your carpentry apprenticeship in Canberra?
I did it in Canberra, yeah, with Johnny Bradley.
Lovely.
And I found out that you had to give 4 days' notice to get out of your employment in those days. So I added up all my sick days and all my holidays that were due, and I worked out what the day was I could leave. 4 days before that, I told Henry Bradley I wanted to leave.
I'd love to know how that was calculated back then, you know, pieces of papers and people's notes of someone's life.
I ran out of fingers.
Was Fair Work even around back then?
Oh, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. And anyway, he wasn't overly happy with that. But I just wanted to get out and try other things, so I got on the road and I hitchhiked around the country for about, I don't know, 12, 18 months, all over eastern Australia. And back in those days, as a carpenter, you only ever had to provide your hand tools, and all the other tools were provided by the boss. So in our apprenticeship, we had toolboxes with a handle on, and that was part of your apprenticeship at Tech. You made one of those things. So what I did, I cut the handle bit off it, and I screwed a lid on it where the handle piece was, and hitchhiking around the place, I'd have it at someone's house in some country town somewhere, and if I found a job, for instance, I sort of one stage I went from Scone in the upper Hunter of New South Wales, working on a farm there for a lovely family. I just earned my keep by fixing their crumbling house up for them. And then I ended up in Roma in Queensland, where your great-grandfather, my dad, no, he's your grandfather, sorry, he was a boundary rider on a big property up there. So I went up and went on an adventure there, and I got a job working on the railways as a carpenter with the old trains, and I had them send up my toolbox to Roma, so I had some tools, and that's how I worked. Then I went into Brisbane and did the same thing.
So by this point, you're 20, 21?
Yeah, 20-ish, around the 20s, yeah, 20, 21, yeah.
And when did you go back to Canberra?
About then, about a year, 18 months after.
Was you were over it, or it was too hard, or you wanted to put your roots down somewhere?
Yeah, I'd spent a bit of time here and there and everywhere, but it was time. I just felt it was time to go back, and I did like Canberra, and I still like Canberra, and so I went down to Canberra and found a crew and started swinging a hammer, putting up house frames and roofs, and back in those days, the way houses were built, they built suburbs at a time similar to now, but they used to give us one side of the street, me and my mate one side of the street, and then another fella and his mate the other side of the street, and we used to just go as hard as we could down the road and build these house frames.
What was a standard working day back then for someone on the tools?
Oh, look, for us, our working day was sort of daylight till to dark.
Right.
That's what we liked, and in the winter it was probably a bit before.
Had you gone out on your own by this point, or you were working for someone?
No, I was out on my own.
Okay.
As a contract carpenter,
Right.
subcontract carpenter on houses.
How was it back then? You'd do the work for 2 weeks, send in an invoice to the main builder on site?
No, well, what we used to do back in those days in Canberra, there was 2 pubs. On the north side you had Belconnen Hotel, south side you had the Statesman, and nobody worked on a Friday afternoon. You went to the pub for lunch, and that's where you got your money and your next week's work.
So you
Paid, and you'd network the pipeline.
Yeah, that's it. And you'd have a few beers, get into a bit of a scrap with someone you didn't like.
Move on to next week.
Move on to next week, yeah. And it was a great way to work, There wasn't much bothering you. Nobody really cared much. Money was good. Worked hard. Money was good. Had some flash cars.
So it was pretty simple.
Pretty simple life, Good existence, yeah.
So how old were you when you decided I'm going to go build my first business?
Well, I guess that was my first business, but, to look at it as a business, and you've got to remember back in those days, before I tell you, how old I was, we didn't know what business, we didn't even realise what business was. You're out there working on a building site as a contract carpenter, and you think you're a carpenter, you're actually a businessman. It's a funny, interesting thing that I tell people, young ones nowadays, when they ask for a bit of advice. I say to them that I didn't know what turnover was. I thought that was something you did in bed at night when you're asleep.
I love it. I remember when Richard Branson, didn't know the difference between gross and net. He thought people were talking about fishing.
Yeah.
I can understand that, mate. Yeah, what's net? I get money and I put it in my pocket and I spend it until the tax man knocks on my door and then have to find a lot more. Look, I couldn't tell you. I can't pinpoint it to age, but I
Early to mid-20s.
early to mid-20s. A good example. What happened in the building industry right across Australia, they stopped making up house frames and roofs on the site itself, and prefabrication came in. which means they were made in a factory and you came out and you whacked them together. And I sort of thought, where it took 2 weeks to make a frame or a week to make a frame and a roof, then it was a matter of days, and it was just, became a little bit grubby for me. And, I thought, this is not going to last. And I went off and found a job hanging fire doors, which, which I was lucky. I was built like the proverbial brick, you know what, and I could lift these things, and I did quite well out of that. And I guess that's about the first time that I thought I'd become it was a business. The guy that I hung the doors for on contract, lovely fellow by the name of Frank Tesserman, he sort of looked after me and gave me good advice. And one thing that really sticks in my mind, and I've said this to you guys, over the years, is try to put yourself somewhere where your income's not controlled by somebody else. And in meaning that it's always controlled by somebody because you're bringing money in from elsewhere, But, a good example, for instance, fire doors, not many people want to do it. Not many people can do it back those days because they were so heavy, So I could make more money out of it. No one wanted to do it.
And that's an interesting point because I'm sure you weren't forced into it. You had the foresight to see that was a niche no one else was going to do, and you could charge a premium for that.
That's it, mate.
And any business, whether it's building or selling teacups, the big retailers want to give you business, but often they want 80% of your business. And what you're saying is, don't ever be in a position where more than half of your business is one customer.
Yeah,
it's a very important lesson.
And just to put that further, that's why which we'll talk more about later, I guess. My building company, we did a lot of specialised work because that's where we knew how to do it. Or we may not have known how to do it, but we knew how to look and figure out how to do it, and others would run a mile.
So I think we'll get into that, but I want to. So you've made this transition to start your own thing, right? And I wrote a book about it, right? Start before you.
Yeah, I know. I know where you got the DNA from.
Yeah, but I think it's there's so many people who may be doing a little bit of side hustle, a bit of contract work on the side, and there's so many stages of a business, right? There's maybe you've got a job and you're doing 2 days a week, kind of freelance. And you really want to get to 5 days a week, and then at 5 days you want to grow your business. I want to run through, where were you in life? Were you married? You had Nathan, our oldest, I'm assuming. Then. So it was a big jump to go out on your own, and you weren't ready. I'm sure the market was tough.
No, I was never ready.
You didn't have the tools. You didn't have YouTube and podcasts and all these things we've got nowadays, right? So
No, we didn't.
I want the listeners to understand where you were mentally, because I think so many people are sitting on their hands with an opportunity to jump.
Well, yeah. First off, just to back what you set up, is something that I always said to you kids when you guys were kids. And I knew you all had a go-get-it sort of attitude, but never let fear stand in your way. What's the worst that can happen? Never let fear stand in your way. But look, it's a really nice story, actually, and I've got a lot of respect for the person involved here. Our oldest one, Nathan, who's a bit older than you, he was a little baby, and we bought our first house, $54,000 or something like it was, but we weren't earning a lot either. So we were at home with a new baby. We were sort of repainting this house at 2 a.m, me and Mum. And so I was going off to work, and I had to get a real job for 12 months so the banks would lend me money. Because, they wouldn't lend it. Those days, I went for a $2,500 loan to get some tools, and they wouldn't let me near it.
It's still so hard for self-employed people
to get funding.
But anyway, that's another story. And I came home one day and I was just so frustrated with everything. And I said to her, I don't know, I just can't do this anymore. I said, I might have to go and start up a business on my own, or go out and do something on my own. I don't know if I'm going to do all right at it or not, but I just want to do it, And I said, what do you feel about this? And I said, if I don't do any good, or if it struggles, you might have to go and get a job, but I don't really want you to do that. And that beautiful human being, your mother, she had a job the next day, mate.
Wow.
And that's
Very lucky.
what you need in life, isn't it?
Yeah,
You
one
need
thing
that backup.
you've always said, and it's always been true to man, true to all of us kids, right? Is get home life sorted first.
Mate,
Everything else is easy.
100 years ago, I remember reading something in the paper and it said 85% of the world's top executives are still on their first marriage.
Yeah.
And just think about that. None of them are heroes, but they got that bit sorted out. Once you got that bit sorted out, you can sail like the wind.
Well, you can just spend time taking risk, calculated risk, thinking, and you're focused, and you've also got purpose.
Yeah, and be mindful of your family life too. That's very important. But, find that balance. It's there.
So you're going out on your own. That was under, for those listeners that don't know, out of Canberra. You were a contracting carpentry business, Canberra Commercial Carpentry at that point, right?
Yeah.
Now, I want to understand how Greg went from one employee to two, and two to five. What
happened?
first steps? Now, was it forced? Was it you had a lot of work? Was it thought through? It's a big step to take.
Yeah, well, it is, and it still is. What happened? I can still remember the first quote I did on an electric typewriter with, what's that paper they put between two sheets of paper?
Carbon
Carbon
yeah.
paper. It was for the
Ugandan embassy.
Right.
And I had to go and pull some petitions and
Right.
put them around. And these guys were trying to con me like there was no tomorrow, but I just stuck by my guns, But anyway, so I got that job, and then, I got that job, and then I started doing other stuff, and that went on well for a while. And then what happened in Canberra, I had a couple other partners at one stage there, not for a very long time, but we came in towards the end of Parliament House construction, which was sort of mid-'80s, and we got onto a bit of a lurk there of doing a lot of finishes at Parliament House. So you can imagine that was, back in those days, it was the largest construction site in Australia.
Wow.
So we've got onto screwing on, say for instance, coat hooks onto toilet doors. You might think that's a little job, but not when there's 2,000 of them.
And not when it's Parliament House.
Not
Like
when
it's
Parliament
a
House,
pretty
yeah.
good testimonial to go tell someone.
Coat hooks, yeah. So it went on, and it got to a point where I needed a hand. So I put a fella on and worked with him for a while, swinging the hammer and doing what I had to do. And then work started running out. So I thought, God, this guy, he's got a family himself. I can't tell him. I didn't have the heart to tell him that he didn't have a job. So I priced work madly, priced too much, and ended up thinking, well, I'm not going to give it back.
Yeah.
I'm going to get someone else to do it. And that's just how it grew. And that went on, through the sort of 80s. And then in the 90s, that's when what we used to call blocks of flats, they now call all sorts of things, apartments, condominiums and all that sort of thing. They became pretty popular in the 90s, and there wasn't any crews around that could do one or two at holus bolus, so I built the crew up to handle those sort of things. It was pretty tough going because it was the builders tried to beat you down all the time, but I just stuck by my guns and they did it my way, and then I figured out various different ways where I could make money. So I thought I'm not going to be able to beat these big builders. So I went to my suppliers and started beating them around the head. When you get a block of apartments, you have 1,000 doors.
Well, it gives you some kind of leverage to actually go back to your suppliers and ask for better credit terms, right? Like the cash has got to come from somewhere. Giving them work as well.
Yeah.
So that's how the transition started.
Right. And that business from memory grew pretty big, right?
Grew pretty big, yeah. Quite a few carpenters came on.
How many people at its peak?
I think at absolute max I had about 80. Then it peaked at that, and I took it right back because I just could not handle all those personalities.
Yeah. Did you have managers?
No, I was doing it all myself. I had a couple of good people, as I guess you could call them managers.
Like
they
lead
were
foreman?
foremen.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were pretty good, So I went right back and found a good amount of people You know,
What was good? 10,
look.
20?
yeah, 15 was good.
Out of interest, what was the most enjoyable size of a business you've had in people? Because it's something that every small business owner battles with, right?
It's really hard. Good question, but a really hard question, especially the construction industry. You've got to remember that I'm a carpenter by trade, so through a lot of this time, I was working on the tools as well. Then it came time to get off the tools. So I really enjoyed the tools. As you know, as my businesses grew over the years, I still believed I was a carpenter. I'm a carpenter, and I used to come home and do a lot of work at home because I like it. It kept me sane, you know, as I do it now with.
You enjoy, yeah.
Disease.
There's something to be said by continuing to love your craft. You
That's
know?
right,
I mean,
yeah.
and you got to be careful. You know, a lot of the stuff that we talk about at Bizbuilders is removing yourself from being dependent on.
Oh, and you got to.
You got to, but at the
got
same
to,
time,
but-
you don't
but
want to
keep it-
lose. You don't want
keep
to
it-
lose your product
Get
That's right, mate. Keep
Best-
place in your
yeah.
pocket.
for some time.
and
Bloody
keep
hell.
upskilling yourself. And
That's
go
right.
out on random
Yeah.
occasions and pull the tool bag out or pull the keyboard out and start coding, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from there, you know, that went on for a while and it was quite good. But, you know, I grew up in the industry in the bad old days of unions, mate. And,
Hot topic at the moment.
well, and, you know, it's always been a hot topic. And quite frankly, you know, unions came about to look after the workers. I've never had a worker complain to unions, to any employer body. They come to me, we work out deals because I believe you keep them happy, you'll be happy. Don't keep them over happy, get rid of them because, you know, if they're greedy, you can't, and your other workers can't afford to have that. But the unions got just so bad, and then bigger companies came in, you know, the big national companies came in and started working, and all they want to do is screw you down, and they couldn't care less. So one of the smaller builders that I was doing subcontract work for, Johnny Collett, rang me up on a Saturday, and it was a really timely call. Mum and I, we were just about to buy a farm out at a place called Wallaroo, in just out of Canberra, and I mean very, very, very close. And he said, "Oh, look, I'm sick of doing this on my own." He's about 10 years older than me, Johnny. Do you want to join up and start a little build company with me? So we did. And honestly, I think those early days of Circol, which was the Spencer Collett, the two names put together, they were very enjoyable.
How long? Like, you had the phone call. You went out next week. Like, did you sit down and do much planning? Did you think about it?
No, we didn't, because both of us had sort of
You had
got businesses already, and we had, and that's a big word, Mick. You know, anybody sort of thinking of teaming up with people before you become all analytic and working out where they are, what they are. You need chemistry between your business partner, and I don't care what corporate hotshot tells you different. That's what's got to be. You need chemistry. It's
And when
Like a
you say
marriage.
chemistry,
you need to be a mate.
you need to have authenticity, and you need to be able to
do.
just say it how it is, right? And
You do.
relationship breakdowns come from not having that, right?
That's
Right,
Before you
and
get into
not-
all
communicating.
It's a good point. You can overthink it as well. But
can.
in saying that, I think there's so many small business owners, they don't have someone else in their business, and it is very lonely.
Very
And they might hire a really good manager, have them 5 years, and then that manager leaves.
That's right,
But you
Industry
and
bodies
John,
do.
and I had the privilege of seeing you and John, and
Yeah.
learning from both of you. You were
Chalk and
completely
cheese.
yin and yang.
You know,
Oh, we were completely yin and yang.
I was the
John
big
John
mouth.
was, books, operations, behind the scenes, compliance. You were customers, sales, team, culture.
Yeah.
Actually, if you look at like writing a perfect business of personality, you probably ticked every box.
Well, I think we did. You know, in these days when they analyse everything, we would have ticked every box, and it all comes back down to chemistry, a good chemistry. I knew he was a good builder. I can't stand money. I like earning money, of course, but I can't stand dealing with it because
Like
Crowds.
day-to-day financial
Oh, yeah.
operations, yeah.
it crowds my style. You know, I'd rather get out and
You were always customer-facing,
Yeah.
hiring staff,
that's
culture,
right.
the brand, the tenders.
yeah, where John would just walk in and go, Oh, looks like we're going to go break this week, Greg. Oh, righto, Johnny. I don't care. I'll go find another job.
I'll go find more work.
Yeah.
Find more work, try and put another % on it.
But you guys are, very successful business circle. Never was, gigantic,
No,
but was around a very long time. You also, had the successful time to sell that business a couple of years
Years
that's
ago,
what I was
to-
going to
to-
say.
management team, which
Yeah,
is,
great
I think, in
guys.
construction, that doesn't happen. There's not really a lot of IP in a building company, but you guys managed to build some of that, and actually, I think it's tremendous because
Oh,
Your
yeah.
the
management.
team bought the business, and I advise, good friends of mine that have bought a business from the owners 30 years later, and it's nice to see because it builds. It's nice to see legacy continue, and I love seeing when I go to Canberra, seeing the Circle trucks driving around.
So do I.
Original logo,
So
original
do I.
team.
Yep.
What, probably now 30 years on?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Must be.
Nearly, yeah. 30 years, I think it's even more.
Might even be more. But
No,
not
34.
5.
But if you were
36.
to look at the and especially nowadays, if you look at the insolvencies in business, but in construction, they're high. Businesses to last that long is rare. I mean, you're operating in less than 1%.
It is.
It is. And look, you go back to the sale of it. I think I really take my hat off to the two guys that bought it off us. One was about 10 years younger than me, Pete, and Tony was your age, but younger. Great combination again. They yin and yang again. But they knew what they were buying. You don't have to have any goodwill in a building company, but when you're buying a name, you're buying something that someone has put a lot of heart into, and that by putting that heart into, it's given a name, for the heritage work that we've done. And
Well, it's
And the infrastructure.
modern day.
that
They call
we've
it a
done.
brand.
Yeah, well, yeah. That
You
brand,
actually
yeah.
created a brand, and a reputation for that, which you probably didn't really think about because you were
No,
just
we
chipping
didn't
away,
think
and it was a very simple blue logo with a white background.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why.
and it's still
Terry
there.
Snow.
Chose you, the government chose you,
Yeah, that's
embassies
it.
all over
Yeah.
it. You were taken to different heritage sites all over Australia to be the expert on.
Yeah.
And look, I would have really loved to pursue that too, Michael. And apart from the awful event in 2011 that got a hold of me and took it down, but I had visions of becoming regional. I didn't want to ever see my name on a tower crane because it's not my style.
There's something to be said for nowadays. We'll tap into nowadays where construction is soon, but you could have done anything, right? Like building is a very wide service.
right.
You could have, and you built houses we lived in, so you could have gone
Yeah.
into extensions, renos, building new homes, building garages, building apartments. But Circle, it always knew its niche and it stuck to it, and that niche was often real kind of work not many people wanted to touch, like tough work,
Yep.
ugly work,
Yeah.
not sexy work, but I'm assuming very good profit work, and was able to kind of grow off that and build a name for that. So I want to unpack that a little bit because I think a lot of business owners, they going through that transition of 1 to 5, 5 to 20 staff, you can become desperate, and when you become desperate, you end up jumping into things that probably don't serve you down the line. And we've all made that mistake, right? Big, bright, shiny job, and then you get into it and it's actually not your core and you mess it up and it can be disastrous. What made you kind of find that niche? Like what were the things you looked for, I guess? And how did you help, I guess, the team stick to that? So you didn't go off doing everything, being everything to everyone.
Okay, what John and I, while we're yin and yang, we thought very similar. One of the things that I did do when we started Circle, John was a little bit anti that. I kept carpenters on. Back in the old days, in the real old days, carpenters worked for builders. Builders employed all their own carpenters. And I really enjoyed having carpenters with me, and I just wanted to carry it on. And it's funny how it evolves when it's like that. And it's a proving ground for building foremen. You can go out and you can get your, you can hire in foremen to do jobs. When they come up from the grassroots of a company, it makes them very, very different. You know, it makes them loyal to them and loyal to the company and loyal to themselves and their family. It's easy for them. It's like, you know, before we were talking about running a business, you need that family life base down first. They're the same. They just want to come and do work and make it interesting, but they want to keep their family life in the right place too. So, you know, that helped us because they evolved with us. They developed the knowledge that I think maybe older tradies have that isn't so much there today. We were taught to swing a hammer and whack a nail through a piece of timber. But the biggest thing we were taught was how to problem solve, how to dig a hole and what to put in that hole. You know, especially as a carpenter, you're sort of the mummy of the building site. Everyone wants a piece of you. You know, oh, Greg, how do you do this? You know, the bloody electricians, plumbers coming in with 3 bank accounts because they're all full. You know, wanting to know how to put a tap washer in or something. You know what I mean? So
You're the CEO of the building site.
yeah, that's right. So that's basically how it developed, you know, into that niche, and I just didn't want to get caught up in that craziness of you know, a lot of builders these days, and I guess it's the same right across the board in businesses, but a lot of builders don't even know how to build. They go to university and they learn I know what they learn because they only got me in this cranky old bloody builder. They got me in to educate them on you know, research and development on blocks and the development of a block and building something onto it.
Never been in a university
I can't
except
even
to
spell.
next minute you're a professor.
And to see their
The action, you know, and
Yeah.
oh, what's he talking about? I thought you employed someone to do that, you know.
It's different. Yeah, it's a different time.
yeah.
So, you know, that was the great thing about it. And there's still a lot of companies around like that, don't get me wrong. And it's fantastic to see them, you know, because it's teaching skills. While they're there, they're teaching skills that really this broad thinking need to be kept.
What do you think builders nowadays are struggling with, and what aren't they teaching?
Specialisation is one of the things that takes away that broad thinking. I think finance is a bit too easy to get a hold of.
Yep.
You know, and it just seems to me that you build a company and you've got no idea.
Yeah.
I've had contractors come to me, Michael, that time after time are half what their price is half what everyone else is, and I pull them in and go, mate, you need to have a look at this. You know, we don't want to take the cheapest price if it's half. Not many builders do, because you're stuck with a problem if that's what happens.
Yeah. I remember those dinner table conversations of you, and you were very good at that, of pulling up your subbies and saying, mate, you're going to go broke.
Yeah.
You can't be pricing yourself so cheap. And pricing is an art.
Well, it is.
But it is your business. If you don't understand your pricing and your margin and your variable costs, pretty simply, you know, one thing goes wrong, you're done. So, but I agree, it's not taught enough.
You know yourself. You learn it your way. And I always say to you guys, no matter what business you get yourself into, you got to know what things cost.
Yeah, you got to know your costs.
Everything costs something, and if you don't know that, you don't know how you're going to make a profit or whether you've made a loss.
Yeah.
And this is where one of the biggest problems is, in my mind.
Yeah. Do you think it's
Bureaucratic input is a real problem also these days, you know. You just don't know where you stand from one job to the next because someone's brought a new law in that might cost.
I hear that a lot. You know, I've heard that with some friends that are in the building game and some of the Bizbuilders members around just the time that it's taking for approvals and the fact that there's no one taking ownership. And that's really hard if you're in business, because every single hour is costing you money if you're holding on to it.
It is, you know, and, you know, a good example is, as you know, Mum and I have sold our great big mansion up on the hill. I couldn't catch her anymore. And we bought our little old heritage house and put a little extension on it and renovation. And a good example of this was, and I whinge about this all the time, our garage slab. I like a garage because I'm a bit of a petrol head. And the original estimation I put on the slab for the concrete slab for the garage, just the slab, no aprons or anything, was $12,000, which was about right. That went to $28,000, and that was because I had to do so much extra work to it to stop it from slipping in a hole in case they had to dig the sewer main out behind it in the next 50 bloody years. Like, instead of shoring
Just unpractical.
instead of shoring up a trench. Of course, it's unpractical. It's money that should not have been spent.
Yeah.
Whether you've got it or not doesn't matter. It should not have been spent. It should have been done the right way.
Other challenges for the building industry is is kind of emerging competition and a lack of probably a lack of specialisation for builders of having their own area crafted and people undercutting them to survive. Like you've seen a lot of that at the moment. It's a pretty desperate market out there in a lot of areas. Insolvencies are really high. People are difficult. People keep leaving businesses for other industries. So there's a big skills shortage nowadays as well. What are your thoughts on that for kind of future builders? And will building change? Like, will building become less about the carpentry, more about being managers?
Well, that's where it is now.
Yep.
Do I like it? Well, the real answer to that is it is what it is. Do I like it? No, I don't, because I'm a grumpy old man with honour.
Which means you've got a passion for the craft of building rather than the computers.
Yeah, well, you spend the first part of your life breaking every bone in your body and wearing your muscles out, and there must be a bit of passion behind that. Yeah, look, and there are a lot of people around that don't know their costs and undercut everybody, and they think that if I pull 5% off that job, I can do it. Well, you know what? You can't, unless you know that you've got 10% on top. You can't do that. You can't do that. And every 5% you lose is actually 10% because you've got to get back to zero before you earn that profit. People don't understand that. But, a lot of us in the sort of work that we did, and it was good because you've got to earn your stripes with government work, for instance, or infrastructure type people. You can see in a tender where you can cut costs in the construction. You can see where it might have been designed a little bit differently, or you can change that. So you can also take a punt there and pull yourself back and try and win the job on that. And what happens with a lot of them, I suppose they're still doing that. It's been a while since I sold the company. They'll pull you in for an interview, and you point all this out to them, and the fair income ones, if you're down low, they'll give you the job based on that. There's a few that aren't so fair income, and they'll throw it back out for a Dutch auction. Those guys need to be taken out the back and had a little bit of a talking to, But that's this undercutting. Just basically comes back to people that don't know their
Yeah, the numbers are very different. Back, I think when you were building Circle, if you guys won a job, you'd include maybe a new truck and you go buy that new truck. Nowadays, there's a bit of a world where it's, money, as you said, money's been easy. People win one job, they go out on their own, all of a sudden they've got a fleet of vehicles that are brand new. They've hitched themselves to the eyeballs.
HSV builders, we used to call them. We won't go right into it.
Yeah. No, but I think it's an important one because it's hard when everyone's doing something and you start growing up around that. You think that's normal. But what advice have you got for people going out on their own like that? And you obviously need to look good.
But
just boils down to the same old thing, Mick. Well, first off, in my day, you didn't need to look good.
Yeah, it's a good point.
You didn't need... If a builder came to you with his flash RM top or something on, and his new HSV ute, you'd be a bit suspect of that guy.
Yeah, interesting.
Oh, good.
Where it's very different nowadays.
Very different.
It's all about image, but image doesn't build things for you.
Yeah.
We would look at that and go, oh, this guy's trying to sell himself, not his business. I don't know about that.
Which we're in a world where it's
all
now about this guy who's an electrician who's building a following and himself, and that's good. But
it's all lipstick and no kiss, mate.
Yeah, you just hope there's kiss there somewhere, right?
That's
we're
exactly
still
right.
building buildings we're living in,
And taking kids in.
Yeah.
I want to touch on quickly with your time growing Circle which is something that's very hard and right-minded for small business owners now. It's people. It's hard to be an employer, especially in Australia, and maintaining people for a period of time is tough. Often small business owners are too busy to prioritise this stuff. Circol was always a very, if there was awards back then for employer of choice in construction, you guys would have, you would have won it, year over year. The things that I really respected was, really long tenure with staff, which to me still is a sign of a good health of a business. You can hold on to people for too long as well, so you've got to be careful. But you always progressed people as well. So people would come in as a dust collector.
Apprentice carpenter.
Yeah, or a labourer.
Exactly.
And a labourer after 1 or 2 years who came maybe just, they were on the way through the towns and finding somewhere, that labourer became a carpenter.
That carpenter became a senior carpenter or a foreman. So you're very good at developing people. You're very good at paying people. You always pay people well.
It's very important. Yeah.
You never
Paid them on time.
And you paid them on time, and you guys were always meticulous at getting paid on time. That all sounds pretty simple, but it's actually, there's a lot of people cutting corners. I want to unpack that. Was that because it actually takes a long time to learn those skills?
Yeah.
How did that come about? Just because you and John are good humans and you thought this is what we should do? Was it advice you got at that time? Was it a mentor in your business?
Probably comes down to good morals and pig-headedness.
Yep.
As far as staff goes, to me, staff in your business are as important as the money because they're the one that bringing it in. So, I've always said this to you guys again. If you break it down, there's 24 hours in a day. 8 of them you sleep, 8 of them you play, 8 of them you're working. So you're not doing anything when you're sleeping. So take the weekends away and you're working half your life. So you've got to enjoy it. And, for my way of thinking, it's my job as an employer to keep my employees happy. I always said to you, if you're going to send one of your workers home with a smile on their dial, they're going to go home and hug their partner, play with their kids, have a great night, feed up watching Queensland flog New South Wales, and go to bed and wake up happy again in the morning. And then they're going to be happy when they come to work, and they're going to give you more than that 6.3 hours in that day whatever it is nowadays, whatever the average is nowadays. And that's very, very important to me.
Yeah, you were very good at, you'd almost, people would want to be working after hours to get jobs finished, but
I don't like it.
You were kicking them home. You were told, no, I need you rest, I need you sharp tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I can't have you burnt out because you're going to be off.
And that's a really interesting thing, all of this prolongation and acceleration and that sort of thing. The amount of, if you want to go through and have a look at some of the case studies on this about people losing productivity from working too many hours in a day, within 2 weeks of that, you're working half the hours. You're actually productive for half the hours what you should be.
You can be more distracted.
Oh,
and if you're right, like someone's working 10 hours a day over 2 weeks,
All of a sudden, their productive
their
hours
actually
are probably full.
averages, exactly. If someone's working 8, they're probably doing 6 hours a day of productive work.
all boils down to one thing, knowing your costs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's knowing your costs.
But I want to, how did that evolve though? Because was it, hang on, we're onto a good thing here, let's invest more into the team? Was it, no, this is just what we want to do? Was it a mentor? Was it someone, who was guiding that?
Oh, look, I think a lot of it comes, my early days, like I said, I come from the bad old days of the 70s when, unions were not only looking after themselves, they were pretty violent. Mm-hmm. They ruled, or thought they did. So I had to, try and, how do I say it? Sometimes I had to fight my employees for their so-called beliefs.
Right.
So I made sure that they were given what was there to give them. There's only a certain amount of money you can give an employee out of that particular task.
Yes.
And I made sure that they got that. So how do I do the best out of getting that? I had to figure out over a period of years that you don't flog it out of them. It's like flogging a horse. You know, with respect to my employees, none of them are horses. None of them were horses. But if you flog a horse, he's going to kick you.
Yeah.
If you look after him, he's going to do anything you want it to. So, her, you know, and it's just being nice to human beings. You can do that. You can be nice to human beings. You can make a workplace happy. You know, you can always walk on there as the big shot boss, and know the names of your employees. You know, go up and ask them. Know the names of their wives or husbands and children, and just be a part of them. They're part of your family, you know.
Yeah, it was good. I think
Interesting.
Circle always did that well.
Yeah, we did.
You never it always seemed like you weren't in a massive hurry either, you know. And I think
We always got things done on time, but
that's right. But in a nice way. Like, you were never forcing growth. You were never forcing your team to do things. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't on job sites, and you know, you could have been a happy
few of
boss,
them like
probably a bit of an angry boss as well, and my older brother was as well. But I think it was nice upon reflection to say, you know, you weren't. Some businesses just cut a lot of corners, and they're hammering staff, and the owners need to wake up and realise that
Yeah, I think
it's
they
be
always
educated a bit.
better.
it's the leader's fault. At the end of the
Yeah,
day, if your staff
yeah.
aren't productive, if they're burning out, it's not their fault. It's
Part
the
of that, knowing
workplace.
your cost, mate.
You know, you
Good lesson.
getting the best you can out of what you got. You know, it's that's what it is. I know. I remember one funny thing that we used to do. Our building in our out at Fishwick, which was the industrial area at Fishwick, it was 55 metres long. There was a strip of 55 metres long by about 3.5, 4 metres wide that used to grow blooming weeds. You know, they're just a dead part of the building, and sick of cleaning it all the time and whatnot. So I had this bright idea that I'd get chooks. So I got one of the carpenters built a chook house. We used to call it the Chook Mahal because it was made out
Cladding.
from all these buildings. So the Chook Mahal, we got 7 or 8 or 10 chooks or whatever. And then everyone in the company, because I used to go shopping every Monday morning for the office, and I'd fill the fridge full of good food. You know, so people had good stuff to eat. And that, well, just put the chook bit on to the side for the moment. Now, this is going back to knowing your costs and how to get the best out of people. My theory is if you allow your people to go down the local takeaway and get a hamburger and chips, that's all carbs, mate. They're knackered by 2 o'clock. If you give them nice, healthy food that they don't have to pay for, that really doesn't cost you a lot of money, and do the Daily Telegraph quiz with them, they're loving it, and they don't go to sleep. And they got fresh eggs from the chooks. But I used to have this rule: if you ever had a meeting with the ACT government, sorry ACT government, but if you ever had a meeting with them, you had to come back to the office and spend 15 minutes with the chooks to debrief.
That's gold. Everyone I knew that worked at Circle, they always had a good time, and everyone. There was very few bad leavers as well.
Very few.
You were always very good at and it's actually one of the questions from a member, but you're always very good at having hard conversations the right way, usually at the right time. Obviously, you made mistakes. You probably wish you had conversations with people earlier, but even people who left, you run into them 5 years later, 10 years later. Some of them started their own businesses very successfully, and they always think very fondly of their time at Circle. And working with you and John, which I think is always...
It's a very nice thing to be my age and see that and hear that, to see that they're successful.
That's a small world,
And
right?
Mick, if you want to look at it from a money point of view, we made plenty of money.
Yeah, but I think it happened
know.
because I think the themes here are you focused on your craft, you loved what you did, you found a good niche, you looked after your people, you knew what 1 + 1 was and -1 was most of the time.
Well, if you asked the accountant anything you want it to be.
That's right. It's actually interesting, handling difficult conversations. It's actually, we've had a few questions from some of the members for today. Have you got any advice for people handling difficult conversations in their business?
Be honest.
Yeah, be honest.
It's really simple answer, be honest. You know, I sacked a guy once in a very nasty way. No, not nasty, in a correct way. And Nathan, your brother, who worked for us for quite a few years, and then he moved up to Brisbane. He came to me after it, and he was quite shocked, and he didn't think I had it in me to do that. And he said, "How can you do that, Dad? How can you just look at that guy and tell him to get out of there?" And I said, "It's really easy, mate. You know, these people take themselves to a level where you lose all respect for him. Now, that person might have had some marriage problems, which you help him with. He might have had alcohol problems, drug, whatever, you try and help him with. But when they get to a point that there's no avenue to take and you lose disrespect for him and you're thinking about all the other staff that are impacted by him, it's a very easy thing to do. You know, there's no.
Where else
So
to go?
what you're saying is, you know, once someone's hit that point that they've maybe done the wrong thing multiple times or
Yep.
disrespected someone else in the business and you've mentally tapped out,
Go, mate.
it's important just
Yeah.
to make that call. And I think we've all been in that situation where, you know, I often say to people, you're only as good as your weakest team member. So if we want a culture of productivity and energy, that weakest link is actually the average. And they're going to bring
And, you
people
know,
down, right?
You know, like what the question one of your members asked, how do you have that hard question? You know, when you've got a 3-year-old child that doesn't know much about anything, and he comes squawking out, carrying on like a pork chop about something, you got to have a hard conversation as a 3-year-old with him. It's exactly the same thing. You have to put yourself in his world or her world and have that conversation with him. There's absolutely no difference. You know, you've got respect for that person, whether it's your own child or an employee. So if they're doing the wrong thing or they're not performing, you be honest and figure out why, you know. And the worst thing you can do is you know, some poor bugger that's having marriage problems, for instance. You know, the best way through that is to sort the problems out. And you might even be part of that marriage problems through being the boss, you know, and no other reason. So you try and help him out or her out. You know, what can I do? How can I, you know, do you need some time off? Or you're spinning out too hard?
Yeah.
What can I do? What can I do? Do you want to sit in the corner and drink a cup of tea for a couple of days, you know, or something? Help them out. Be honest with them, but don't assume. Don't ever assume anything. Go and be straight to people.
Before we finish up, you know, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self? So you're almost 70 now. And
I feel it.
if you could give advice to your 20-year-old self going out on their own, setting up a business nowadays, what would it be? What do you wish you knew back then?
That's a really hard question to answer because, to me, my whole work career has been an absolutely brilliant adventure.
Yeah.
I never did I make mistakes. In other people's eyes, in people's eyes, I might have, and in my eyes, yeah, I have too. Has there been sad times? Brad, who you know, was a sad time.
Yeah.
But I just give myself advice, none. Give other people advice, be honest with other people and be honest with yourself. Learn your costs.
Yep.
Always be onto your costs and have an adventure.
Yeah, you always said
It's an adventure.
you always said to us kids, we don't care whatever you want to do, go do it, but be the best and have a lot of fun.
Yep, that's it. Because you get one bad at it, and I learnt that back in 211, mate. You get one bad at it, and you're lying in bed, and you're going to die. And I look back at myself, and I thought I remember thinking there was nothing I could change. I've had a good life.
True.
It's very true.
I love my children and my grandkids.
We're a good set of kids, aren't we, eh?
Ah, you're great. You're great. And my in-laws.
Love it. Oh, well, thank you very much, Greg, Dad, Spencer.
No worries, Mickey.
Build your thing.
Good on you, mate.
Go get them.
Thank you.